Hello and welcome to the Neurodivergents and Mental Health podcast. My name is Sally Nilsson and I'm a psychotherapist, published author, public speaker and mum. I discovered my autism and ADHD aged 56 in March 2021, and having rewritten my life story, I'm on a quest to advocate for neurodivergent community. I hope you enjoy listening to my incredible guests sharing their experiences of autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, Tourette's and OCD. We talk about growing up, education, work and personal stories, and how mental health has played its part in shaping lives. Our conversations cover spectrums, traits, challenges, acceptance and successes. So sit back, relax and find out what it means to feel, think and be different in a neurotypical world. So hi Sara-Louise, and thank you so much for agreeing to take part in the Neurodivergence and Mental Health podcast. And as the name suggests, we're just going to be talking about your journey, how things have been affected, your mental health, things like that. But I'm also very, very excited because you have some really interesting special interests that you're doing at the moment, and I'd love to talk about those. So you've kindly said that I can call you Sara.
You can.
I don't trip over my words, so thank you very much for that. So what I'd like to do, just to start, if it's okay, is just ask you to introduce yourself, give us your name, roughly where you live, and briefly what it is you do as far as your work and interest is concerned in neurodivergence. Over to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for choosing me as one of your guests. It's really, really a privilege. So I'm Sara, and I'm in West London. At the base of all of my projects, I'm a therapist with a business background, and I have a social impact company called Wired Differently, which has 9 different projects in neurodiversity.
Fantastic. And I will ask you a bit about that because I've known you through the mainly LinkedIn and various other ways. You've coached me and it was absolutely fantastic. And,
thank you.
And we've also been talking about sweatshirts, and I'm still waiting for mine. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's because I have a great logo done by Georgia Matos, and everyone wants it on a sweatshirt.
I know, and it's just, and I love the logo. I love everything about it, and we'll come on to that. So the first question I will ask you, Sara, is what is your neurodivergence? How long did you discover you are, ... and do you have any co-occurring differences?
Okay, so I was formally diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder at the age of 38, so that was 5 years ago. And I realized during the pandemic that I have ADHD because I had a couple of episodes of rejection sensitive dysphoria, and I work with a neurodiversity coach. So my coach is Susan Issa, and we identified that that was pretty much what was going on, and I'm just about to be formally assessed. So I'm self-diagnosed ADHD, formally diagnosed autistic.
Fantastic. And that's really interesting, actually, what you say about formally with the autism. So you're saying formally autistic and self-diagnosed with the ADHD.
Yeah.
And so am I. I mean, just to add that in, because the thing is if you're anything like me, and I'm absolutely sure you are, when you went through this journey, yours was 38, did you say?
Yep, I was. Yep.
Yeah. And mine was 56. And of course, I went into a huge hyper focus and did hundreds of hours of research. Mm-hmm. And so, if somebody was to go diagnose me ADHD, I would say 85 to 90% that they would say I was combined. I see it in
absolutely.
Myself. I see it in myself.
To be honest with you, it's not something I'd thought about before because I didn't know about the RSD side. But once I'd realized that that was what I was struggling with, I think 3 or 4 times last year, I then looked into all, and of course I have so many ADHD clients and I have such an affinity with them. And then the last person you recognize is yourself, right? So
yeah.
That's how it went with me too.
Yes, it is. And for therapists, our journey and the decades that we've had, we are experts in a lot of things. Of course, every neurodivergent person is different, but we are, I mean, we call them these words, which I do get a little bit frustrated with. You know, all of the words I get and terms I get frustrated with. The only thing that makes sense is that we're different.
Mm-hmm.
So
Different to the 84%. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about your, you know, your assessment and diagnosis journey? Was it straightforward or difficult? And when did you say, and you said you were diagnosed when you were 38?
Yeah, so it was straightforward. I went private. I think I'd realized about 12 months prior. I mean, I'd done the assessments and screenings and things, and I thought, right, this is pretty much a sure thing. But I think that we are quite prone to imposter syndrome on the spectrum, because we tend to have this real focus and value about truth and ethics and honesty. And I think, you know, if anyone's going to struggle with imposter syndrome, I think it's ND people. And it was mainly because of that I thought, I need this confirmed, especially working as a therapist and doing, you know, public talks like this and public speaking. So I just felt personally that it would be best to have the bit of paper, and it was really validating. And the information that came back was just, yeah, it just confirmed so many things. And I'm glad I did it. But I absolutely have a lot of respect for people who are self-diagnosed. I'm not particularly insecure about the fact that for the moment I'm self-diagnosed on the ADHD side. I was comfortable with it, but for various reasons, I just wanted to be sure. Partly, Sally, because I've worked linked to the benefit system. And, you know, if people fall on hard times, they don't have a diagnosis, they can't really claim anything. My biggest fear would be, you know, I'd literally be homeless because at some point I couldn't work in my life and I couldn't pay the rent. And, you know, in my anxiety, moments of anxiety, that's the sort of thing I would think of. So I just wanted to feel protected, I guess. Sorry, that was quite a long answer.
No, it's a fantastic answer, Sarah, and I absolutely get that. And you know, because I'm a psychotherapist too, as soon as I mean, that build up to the day, knowing that this person who was assessing me was going to tell me at the end of the session whether I was autistic or not, and thank God that they did say that I was autistic.
Yeah.
And but what a relief. And as soon as I got that, I came out straight away. I changed my directory listings, my website. I told everybody, partly because of what you're talking about, because I want to advocate. You know, I'm not a huge, great big activist necessarily, but I want to try and help people as much as possible, because for my own mental health, apart from anything else, helping others is a really, really good thing to do. And partly because of status to a certain extent, if I'm going to be on a platform, I do want to be able to say, yes, I am autistic. But then, you know, many of my clients come to me and self-diagnosis is 100% valid. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I totally get that. I get that with any of it, because, you know, the one I suppose is dyslexia. I mean, that tends to come up at school quite easily, and it's very accepted, and to some degree even ADHD is, but autism is so complicated, and we need people like us to help, don't we, to advocate.
Absolutely. Yeah, one thing I really like doing is highlighting the everyday ways in which being autistic, ADHD affect me, because it just doesn't seem to be the bits that you find in books. And that's why I'm writing an ebook, just because I want to write about the bits that you can't read about anywhere else. There are some great blog posts, there's some great, you know, bloggers and some great YouTubers, but I don't think I've ever found the book that I want to sit down and go, okay. And so, yeah, I thought I'd have a crack.
I've totally got you with that. Pretending to be normal, and there was another one, absolutely fantastic. And actually, you know, I'm not flashing my book today, but you know, you don't even know. I don't talk about it because it's about my life to the age of 56. But if you are autistic ADHD, you'll know I am from reading it, and it's that, you know, it's try and help people. So just tell me a little bit before we go on to the really meaty bit, which I'm very excited about, which, you know, because I think we need to talk about it, and I'm just dangling this in front of our listeners, but it's, you know, you wait, 'cause it's going to be very, very good. How was it for you? Just give me a bit of a feel, how it was for you, Sarah, when you were growing up, you know, primary, middle, secondary school, a bit of sort of college and university. Did you have any particular, you know, struggles and challenges? And just give us a flavour of what that was like.
Yeah, I loved primary school. It was small, it was in a little village. I just remember everyone was equal. It was not very materialistic. You weren't aware of differences. You weren't aware that, one person's parent did this and your dad or mum did that. There was no comparison. It just felt equal. We were all there in our old clothes, and I don't know, it just felt like everyone was the same, and that really appealed to me. I did get interested in boys. I've been interested in boys and girls since I was really, really little. I've been identified as bisexual since the age of 3, so there was no doubt there. But I did start getting feelings for boys, and I remember once a little boy kissed me in the playground, and I went home and thought that I had to hurt myself or kill myself because we weren't married. And I don't know where I got that from, because
Oh,
I don't come from that type of background where I have,
yeah.
particularly strict parents. So I don't know, I probably got that from TV or something, that
Oh
but
gosh.
or a former life where I was a nun or something. But yeah, I definitely internalized something very weird there. So I definitely had a very, very strong and slightly warpy sense of right and wrong. But I loved it. I loved learning. And then there was a brutal change when I went to secondary school, and then I think everything really hit the fan there, because it was huge. It was very materialistic. It was all about who had, the tanning bed at home. And I mean, we were 13. I think everyone thought that they were in Beverly Hills 90210. And it was all about the fake tan. It was about the lads. It was about the fashion and the wear what you like days, and I was the least cool of them all. And I also had huge boobs, which was good and crap at the same time.
Yeah. Did you
you
have
know
a phone at that point? I know it sounds a really bizarre question, but
no.
we didn't have phones. And I'm thinking, my kids are 21 and 19, and they didn't have phones until they were sort of 14. And that's from the year 2000. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's really difficult as well. So did you have phones?
No, I remember at that time my dad's always been in sort of car and vehicle sales, and I remember him as the typical car salesman, and his phone was the size of a brick, but
Yeah.
it certainly
Yeah.
wasn't the age where the kid would
Yes.
have the mobile.
Yes.
No way. Or not one that you could get into a backpack to go to school with.
So you managed to get through secondary school, which is it's horrific. It's so
Oh,
awful. I'm so glad they're bringing back Grange Hill. They better do a good job of it, because that was absolutely my era,
Grange
and
Hill was great. It was actually quite accurate.
it was very good. And then my son was watching Waterloo Road, and that was really good. And my school was a mixture of that. It was very rough. So then you skip on to college and university. If you went to university, how was that part for you?
Well, firstly, I just wanted to say that secondary school I actually developed OCD, which
Oh,
really took up a lot of my life. I think I just couldn't cope with all the change, and I didn't get puberty. So university I actually went to a little bit late. I left school at 16. I then went back to night school to do my A levels about 3 years later, and then I went to uni. So had a little bit of a break where I did other things. I went and lived in France, and I went into theatre and did some quite cool stuff for someone of that age. But university, I hated it because I thought, so I went to Exeter, which back then was the failed Oxbridge Candidates University, or the
oh,
Greenwelly
really?
University. Yes, although I didn't apply to Oxbridge because I was the one who I knew I wasn't going to get in. That's the difference.
Yeah, yeah,
Everyone
yeah.
else thought they might and didn't, and ended up at Exeter. But no, Exeter was not a good place back then. It was known as very, very bitchy. It was very much, minor royalty it girl kind of university, and
Oh,
everything that goes with
yuck.
that. Yeah, it wasn't me. I mean, I
Yeah.
must admit, by that point I was very interested in different cultures. It wasn't, I mean, at the end of the day, it's in Devon. I kind of went home to university, so you don't expect a multicultural experience. But yeah, it wasn't my thing. I did expect more independence. I got on brilliantly, typical ND, got on probably better with the tutors and lecturers than I did with the other kids, like you do at
Yes.
school.
Yeah.
um and yeah, it wasn't the liberal wonderful experience. I also had a massive, I come from a family, I guess, which is quite sort of working class but mixed with middle class, so I had a bit of an identity crisis. And I was around kids that their parents worked at the Foreign Office. They thought I was the most working class thing they'd ever met, and yet my friends thought I was being really posh. I couldn't work out who the hell I was. But I think that's down to the fact I speak quite autistically. So I think my speech is quite autistic. So yeah, there was a lot of that. I chose politics because it was quite frankly the hardest thing I got accepted for, so it sounded good, but I didn't really know anything about politics. And I also got accepted to do Arabic, but you had to spend a year in the Middle East by yourself, and I was too scared, so I turned that
That's
down.
fantastic. That's so autistic. I absolutely love that.
It was a bit random, but I have always had a real thing about Middle Eastern and Eastern Med and Asian cultures. So, but yeah, I don't think I had the balls to actually go at that stage. So,
Can I just add on to that, because that's quite funny, because you thought you went politics and Arabic, and I'm thinking of KAD, of course. And then, but there's me in my terrible alcoholism state in about 2005. I decided to skip off to college and study to become an electrician
did
for a
you? I
year.
could see you doing that though, because you can you're a sort of person you could turn your hand to anything.
Yes, I was absolutely terrible.
Oh, were you?
Yes, I was awful. I couldn't do it, and I still can't change a plug.
I wasn't expecting you to say that.
No, I was awful. I was much better as a taxi driver, which was a bit later after that. So interestingly, normally you wouldn't expect university to be all bitchy and horrible, but it was. But you finished it and you came out, and just putting it all together, really, what were your biggest challenges being neurodivergent? You've mentioned OCD, and I wanted to ask you if you were a checker or cleaner or both. What were your main challenges for your mental health during your education side?
Oh, goodness. Okay. So, well, I've already talked about RSD, so I'm going to go in with another one here. So I basically at 13 I developed OCD, a colloquially known version, a colloquially called version of PureO. PureO is where it looks like it's a pure obsession because you can't see the compulsion. So my obsession was in my head and my compulsion was in my head. So it was pretty horrific. I was a little girl, and I would literally be, mum and dad would be in Sainsbury's, and I'd be walking around, and I'd be looking at, I don't know, crunchy nut cornflakes, and suddenly a voice would come into my head telling me, "Are you sure you're not sexually attracted to children? Are you not a paedophile?"
Yes.
And I really like talking about that because it took 2 decades of my life, and I was in a bit of a mess over it, and when I was in my 20s, I did think about suicide about 3 times because it was just the most horrific. I mean, I can't imagine thinking anything more horrific, but that is exactly how it works. So I often see people with OCD, and I definitely recommend What to Do When Your Brain Gets Stuck, which is a Dawn Hubner illustrated children's book, but it makes it so unthreatening. And I love talking about what is colloquially known as PureO, because it is the form of OCD nobody talks about because of the P word and the sex word. And yeah, it took away my sexuality. It took away my ability to think I deserved anything in that vein, because I thought, well, that I must be dangerous, I must be dirty, and unfortunately that's how it gets you. It traps you, and you can't talk to anyone.
Can I just add in on that, because I've had clients coming to me and they didn't know it was PureO, and I'd read about it because I was interested in OCD and seeing people with OCD, but this was coming out differently, and obviously confidentiality, so I'm just going to use something similar to give an example.
Yeah, sure.
But I was getting clients that were coming to me with the one, I think I've run somebody over, and I've got to go back. But some of the bigger ones were, you can't go past a knife without wanting to get it and actually stabbing it into your mum.
Or your baby, or absolutely.
And lots of paedophilic type stuff. And also the one with, pushing your child around a supermarket in a trolley and looking at your child and thinking you want to kill it. I mean, PureO, it's a very good term for that, because it's pure. It's one thing, but lots of them, and they change over the years. But they're so dramatic, aren't they, Sarah?
They're so dramatic, and the problem is you physiologically, you go hot and cold, so you're very seduced by the fact that your body's having a physiological reaction, which means that you naturally believe it must be true more, because you think if it wasn't true, why would I feel these things? You're constantly checking in, am I turned on? Am I, and it was absolutely terrifying. And I can honestly say the last time I had a vague, oh my God, what if I'm a paedophile thought was during lockdown. I had 1 week where I was a bit like, oh, if my mum and dad, bless them, they're older now. One of my biggest fears has always been, one day I'll lose them. That day it will happen. The day something really horrific happens, those thoughts will be there. And it's very much keep checking yourself, keep checking that you're not gonna stab your boyfriend, hurt your mum, spit on an old lady in the street. So I've spoken to people in the past and they've said, I told my therapist and about these awful thoughts I was having, and it's awful because you wonder what the person will think. And I remember one person saying, well, my therapist told me that if the worst thing I could imagine doing was smashing a banana in an old lady's face, that would be my PureO thought. And I was kind of like, I like how that's made it non-threatening and brought it down to earth, because people who are terrified that they may one day have a thought that they could be a paedophile, they're not the paedophiles.
Yeah, which is a bit like BPD, and it's a bit like big phobias, which I do with the rewind technique with clients, because instead of the mother looking at the child in the shopping trolley walking around the supermarket saying, I want to kill you, your child suddenly turns into a really beautiful little kitten, really fluffy with lovely ears, just purring at you, and so we can work with that, and that's amazing.
Nice.
So, I mean, that must have been so hard for you. And what I'd like to do, because you've mentioned it a few times, before we go on to talking about the thing,
mm-hmm.
can we just hover briefly again over rejection sensitivity dysphoria? Because I know that some autistic people will experience it. I've got, it does get quite frustrating when neurotypical people say, well, no one likes criticism, everybody feels like that. And then if I say, you've got to live in my world when it happens, but they're not going to give you time to describe what it is actually like. I mean, I feel emotional talking about it, because people, I'm sorry, do not understand what rejection sensitivity dysphoria is like. And I lived my life with such pain from it, and it sent me to the bottle.
Yes.
The dopamine and the rejection sensitivity was why I drank, not because I should have been sitting in AA talking about mental health and alcohol at that point.
Yeah.
I was in so much pain, I needed something. And actually, when you find out what it is, it cuts it in half. It cuts it in half.
It
when
does.
You actually get the validation and the understanding. So I would really love to hear your experience of rejection sensitivity dysphoria when you didn't know about it, and then when you found out about it.
Yeah, so basically I remember speaking to my coach during the pandemic, because I actually just went on a picnic with some friends. I was living back in Cheltenham, and we went on a picnic, and I went from having a picnic to being suicidal within 72 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite terrifying because I didn't really relate as somebody who had any problems. Everything was fine. It took me out of the blue, but it took me to a very dark place very quickly. And I wasn't actively planning suicide. I just felt like I was moving towards it. It was a feeling. And I always think when someone's suicidal, we talk about suicidal thoughts, but we don't often talk about what it feels like to feel that that is just going to be inevitable, and you almost enter into this calm accepting. And I've said before on interviews that I've worked with lots of people who felt suicidal, and it's when that almost monotone seductive voice comes in, where it's almost convincing that this is what I'm going to do and it's okay, and I'm always like, oh, hold on a second. That's what I was doing in my head, because the pain is
as well. Was that a bit PureO as well?
No, this was RSD. This was some perceived rejection. I just was feeling, and I was with really great people. Whenever I'm back there, they're exactly the sort of people exactly the group of people that I seek out to make sure I spend time with when I'm down there. It's nothing like that. It's just, we have a communication and social condition, and sometimes I just feel very out of step. I felt like everything that was being said, I was 2 sentences behind. I was reacting, therefore my reactions were mismatched to the points being made. I just felt out of step. I felt isolated. I felt like I was behind double glazing. I felt like I couldn't connect. I felt like I was terrible at this, and everyone says, oh, you're such a great communicator, and I thought, right, out of work I'm just shit basically. And I just sort of started thinking, well, if all I can do is work, what's the point? And I'm never going to be able to connect with anyone. And it was terrifying. And I had the same thing happen after a dinner party, and the same thing happen after a wedding last year. So Yeah, it was really horrific. I think the one in September was the worst I've ever had, and it's very painful. But what I would like people to know is it's physically painful too. And the day
Yes.
after, the one in Italy particularly, the day after, I literally felt like my chest was, like smashed up glass in a bar where you'd had a fight the night before. I literally felt like everything was sharp and spiky, and it was like a million glass cuts all over me. It just really
That's
painful.
terrible. And I'm sure that lots of people will have different, like fibromyalgia and all sorts of really awful feelings. And I know after my RSD, it is exhaustion, and it's absolute burnout, non-verbal on the
Yes.
sofa, can't move. Please don't talk to me, don't touch me, don't do anything.
Yeah, no facial expressions, just a
Nothing.
complete, yeah.
And it is pain, and it is crippling. And if somebody keeps getting it, like you were as well, we are talking about suicidal ideation, and it's very, very scary. And I know that CBT can be good for ADHD, but we have to be incredibly empathetic, validating, and take that journey with the person who has rejection sensitivity dysphoria, because we've got to do something about it. We can't really be walking around with things actually happening because we're autistic, and things being perceived that it's happening. And I was a little bit concerned when I read the article this morning from it was on one of my platforms, from Attitude magazine, and they were talking about RSD, and I was getting into the article, but then literally halfway down, the rest of the whole article was all the medications that can be used with it. And I just thought, this is something that happens to us people who have this thing we call ADHD, and there's a pill.
And 99% of people with ADHD have it.
Yes. And I think there's a lot more we can do. There's a lot more hard work we can do with people, for people, ADHD people, who are experiencing these symptoms that we call RSD, but actually it's what it feels like.
It is.
Tell me
and
what
also
it feels like, and what's going on in your mind, what's going on in your body, what are your feelings, if you can name them.
This is exactly, absolutely. And also another thing with RSD that I've noticed and that I work with my clients is when we say rejection sensitivity, we imagine a person rejecting us, either actual or perceived. But sometimes it can be that we feel a situation or a place is rejecting us, or a set of circumstances. So you can't always put your finger on kind of what the enemy is. And I recently had this with a client where I said to them, what you're describing, I think is RSD. And they said, but no one rejected me. I said, but if you think about it, you felt othered. The whole setup was making you feel othered. And your reaction to that was very much a rejection that you were basically, swallowing. And they sort of said, oh my goodness, that makes sense. But I wouldn't have thought of it as the word of being rejected. So I think you're right. And when you say we have a lot of work to do, it's the classic awareness raising. But how often do you see articles about RSD? I've never spoken about it where someone hasn't said, what's that? Whether they have ADHD or not, it's just not talked about enough. And that really bothers me.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've written books about it without even knowing what I was writing about. All my life, I have been looking after the underdog. And basically the point of that, which I discovered, was that I cannot bear that's what dysphoria means, not being able to bear.
Yes.
I cannot bear, even more sometimes, I cannot bear the suffering of others. I cannot bear seeing someone else rejected when it's not fair, which is the autistic justice.
Absolutely.
But when I would see my children when it wasn't fair, and it was emotionally attached as well, if I saw my children rejected, my heart was being torn from my chest.
Yes. Yeah. And I've always related to that in you. I remember when I first came across you, it was on LinkedIn, and I remember reading your post and thinking, oh my goodness, I could have written that, because this woman has a sense of injustice and she's got the balls to fight stuff. And I related to you straight away. So yeah, I really get that.
And yeah, thank you so much for telling me about that. So it is rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And if our listeners think that they cannot bear rejection, they cannot bear being criticized, or the perception of it, or the suffering of others because they've been rejected, then please Google it and search about it, read about it. There's lots of articles, and there is a test you can do with Attitude Magazine if you're interested in doing that. So we're going to round it up now, because I'm looking at our time together, and I have the very big question at the end, which I'm absolutely got to ask you about. But I think really the biggest thing is we're going to start talking about sex.
We are going to talk about sex. It needs doing, right?
But the thing is you know, you mentioned earlier on, which is really exciting, that you're writing an ebook, and you said to me before we came on air that you really want, you know, almost half of the ebook now to be talking about intimacy, relationships, sex within autism and probably neurodivergence in the community. And so I'm really interested, because for 56 years I never knew my weird and wonderful me and sex was because I was neurodivergent, and I love it.
Yep.
All of it. So I'm going to hand it over to you. Tell me all about it. What are you up to?
Okay, so the reason I got interested was for various reasons. I actually had my virginity taken by a doctor cutting my hymen. I couldn't lose my virginity. I had to have these six plastic tubes inserted every couple of weeks, because I had a total fear of losing my virginity. I think I thought it would be like putting a pin in a balloon and I'd go bang on the inside. You know, when we're at ND, we internalize certain one-dimensional images and we take them to the nth degree. So my sexual journey started off with being a very sensory, probably a little bit of a Lolita when I was younger, and I was freaked out because I had the PureO going on, so my sexuality didn't belong to me, it belonged to this horrible mental illness. Then I knew I was bisexual from the age of 3, so I was very comfortable with that. I had relationships with men and women. I now only date guys, but I'm still really attracted to girls. And I'm just fascinated. I'm fascinated by the fact that in the neurodiversity community, we have a huge number of people who are sexuality fluid, who are gender fluid, who hate sex, who love sex, who are asexual, who don't mind being touched, but they would like advance warning or permissions, or, you know, I'm fascinated. I'm very well versed in domestic abuse, domestic violence from doing professional training, but also I'm a survivor of various forms of psychological, financial, etc. abuse. Unfortunately, I've, you know, and that has to be said, in our community we are particularly prone because we can't read agendas. We tend to see the good in people, and I don't think we ever see discussions of domestic violence and domestic abuse where it relates specifically to ND people, and so I wanted to train in that so I could run groups for ND people. So from a mental health point of view, I'm very worried that on dating apps there's a lot of BDSM, or rather domestic abuse masquerading as BDSM. I'm very, very worried about that. BDSM? So when you have, you know, sadism, masochism, and that type of, you know, fetishes and power games.
I used to know it as S&M in the old days. Is it advanced now, like LGBTQ plus?
Yeah. I guess so. But it's basically, it's, I guess, I mean, I'm not an expert, but I would describe it as power play, essentially, in various forms.
And there's some horrible news about that, about some Polish people in Surrey at the moment with a brothel. It's actually it's actually on the news at the moment. And that's, you know, I mean, it's such a great subject to talk about and bring it out. I mean, I know I loved the series. I'm not going to change subject. I'm coming back, but I just want to talk ADHD and I get all interested.
We love that, right? That's how you have the best conversations.
Yeah, well, my loopy binge watch is The Bridge.
Yes, okay. You've told me about that. I still haven't seen it.
Oh, I absolutely adore Sara-Louise, and apart from fancying her, and I never realised that I was a sort of a magnet for other women. I just didn't read the signs, and I didn't realise that I was a closet buyer, and I never really did anything about it. Well, I did a bit about it, but not a lot. But I was definitely Sara-Louise during a big period of my life. Yeah, and it's not emotionally attached whatsoever. And so it was quite a few partners, and, you know, I knew exactly what I was doing, and it was all great, and I didn't have any emotional problem about it. And so everybody is different like that. But one of the things that comes up with it, and I wonder if that's whether you talk about this as well, it's a wonderful subject: morals.
Well, yeah, we
And
have them.
yes, absolutely. And the thing is, because I'm autistic, I've got quite a high moral fiber and
Yeah.
scruples and things like that to a certain extent. But my ADHD side of it is shut up.
That's super interesting. I get you completely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I love doing that, and I'm going to do it because that's my impulse, my dopamine, and I'm going to go and do it. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm
Yeah.
not being mean and nasty, but I need my stimulation, and that's what I want. So morals
Yeah.
have to get. So sorry, sadly, autistic moral girl out the window. ADHD. Come on, love. Let's go for it. What do you think?
Oh my goodness, I think so much about this. How long have you got? So yes, okay, I struggle with this too. So I've got friends that call me things like Mrs. Waitrose and Jane Austen because I come across as prim and proper. I'm not, but I have that side. So I think that's another, you know how we're bags of contradictions, ND women.
Oh,
I think that
absolutely. Yes, love it.
we have the sense of justice, we have the morals, but we also have the impulse, we have the sensory seeking, we have the need for intensity. So I struggle because, you know, I'm in London. Here in London, the dating scene is, I would say, different to what I knew of outside of London and other places. Here, it's very much about dating openly until you meet someone you want to be exclusive with. I find that difficult because I'm naturally someone who's loyal. I see the good in people. I can't have deep meaningfuls with 10 people at once.
Yes.
I can't have, you know, sexual relations with 10 people at once. I'm
Yeah.
okay at the whole, like, you know, you might go off and have a, you know, play date or a quick one or whatever, but I can't maintain that. I can't have multiple lovers, and you know, I can't. Yeah.
It's
I
like
met my.
multitasking when
It is.
it's you know, there's some ways we can multitask really well, and our brain can go all over the place and ideas, and yes, I'm problem solving, I'm solution, I'm doing this and everything else.
Yeah.
But then there's another part of us, isn't there, where no, that can't work. It has to be one at a time.
Yeah, and it's making me feel a bit old school, because if you're dating one at a time, but the person that you are interested in is dating openly because that's what you do and that's what they need, it's like, what do? Do you keep dating openly so things are equal, or it's very difficult. But I think I am quite old school, but I definitely have a, let's say, very modern side. We'll just leave it there. The other day I met my business heroine, Emma Sale, who owns Killing Kittens, which is one of my favorite businesses, and that's connected to the sister network. I'm a big fan of Emma.
I need to find out more about her. Please
Emma's
put all these links in.
I will.
Yeah, just send me the links separately. Everything you've spoken about, and that book about you told me about earlier, and about, you know, your platforms, because we all want to know much more about this. Carry on.
Absolutely. So Emma Sale at Killing Kittens, Heather Morrison at Bumpin', which is a disability-led sex toy company in Australia. You know, these are the people in sex tech, people in who are advancing, you know, what sex is and who is allowed to have it. Because I mentor young people who are on the autism spectrum. The expectation is, well, they won't have sex because they're autistic. You know, that unfortunately, people are considered, you know, when we have what I relate to personally as a disability, we're not seen as sexy. So people like Heather are wonderful to me because they show you that everyone is allowed sexuality. And I think the main thing for me is opening up the right to be sexual, the right to have a relationship. Yes, we have communication and social condition, but we are allowed to connect in however the hell we want. And let's show neurotypicals too. You know, I'm not saying every neurotypical follows some sort of 9 to 5 and a standard convention, but we tend to be the out of the box thinkers, is what I'm saying. And yeah, personally, I've never wanted the 9 to 5, knock off on a Friday, go to the pub, Saturday IKEA, Sunday you get over a hangover, back to the office on Monday. Like, I don't really do vanilla, if I'm honest.
And I love that. And there just a few things popped up about there just to join in, because I love all of that. Is that she's into tech, and you know, just, you know, a little giggle, if you don't mind, is you know, the thing about sex toys. So if she can help me with my Morris Minor Hillman imps, and help me get into some more sort of Ferrari and McLaren, I'll be really happy with that. And then
the Rolls Royce of sex toys. Yep.
Yes, exactly. And then there's a thing about you know, I wonder if sort of more autistic people can be more polyamorous and that sort of thing.
Yes, we can be.
They're sort of, you know, they have their ways, and there's the fluidity and all that sort of different thing.
Yeah.
And the ADHD is the sex and the stimulation. And then when you get both of them together and bringing other things as well, things like PDA, the
Yep.
demand of sex and all that sort of stuff as well.
Yep.
There is so much there, isn't there?
It's
And,
so interesting, yeah. And also the traditional gender roles and the fact that we often reject them because we don't often like to be pigeonholed as, you know, you're this type of woman or you're that type of man. There's lots of people in our community who are
yes.
non-binary.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is fascinating. It is literally the proverbial hall of mirrors, isn't it?
It is fascinating, and I'm always very honest with my clients and with everybody I come along at, because I never want to be pitchforks at dawn. And I'm quite a newbie. I only found out, last March, and I get it wrong. And it was tough last year because I did get quite a lot of people in the LGBTQ area who were more on the activist side telling me off a lot, and I don't like being told off too much.
No, I
And
can imagine that.
I'm trying to learn, I am
Yeah,
trying
of course. Yeah.
but I don't like to be conforming to terminologies and things like that. It's, for me, it's all about the way you feel, and let's all have conversations together, and it is quite important to do that. But you were telling me about your work schedule the other day, and I did a sort of Tom and Jerry jaw dropping on the floor and my eyes popping out moment, ka-dung, 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 heart, because I just cannot believe how hard you work. And please, Sarah, look after yourself and make sure you don't burn out.
I do. I sleep every day between 2 and 4. So my day is long, but I have a big cutoff point and reset. Yeah.
And that's amazing you do that. I can't do that because as soon as that's why I can't do mindfulness and meditation, because as soon as I lay down, it's what are we having for dinner? Boris Johnson's such an idiot. And why did that person say that to me? And there's a fly on the wall, and where's the cat? And she's dead outside. And
well, it's very ADHD. I think I'm autistic when I'm going to sleep. I literally, my brain is full on, and then when I met my counseling tutor in Paris, the first thing he said to me was, "I bet you sleep easy at night." And I was like, "How do you know that?" And he said, "With a brain like yours, you must just go when you hit the pillow." I was like,
amazing.
"Hi, I'm Sarah."
Yeah, but look, I'm similar in a different way. I've just realised similar in a different way. There we are.
There you go. That's ND.
Yeah, I've got my Fitbit, and I've had it for 4 years, and,
okay.
and I write it all in columns in my bullet journal, and it's very, very, very autistic in there.
Okay.
But the one thing is I can't nap, and I wish I could. I really can't nap, but I do sleep well. And so I'm a sleep advocate for mental health. It's really, really important. But actually, I might not be, but it just so happens I am. So I know my deep sleep, my REM, how much I dream, and my quality of deep, and all of it. And it is pretty good, actually. I've got even the 4 hours I had last night, which was unusual, was good quality sleep.
They were still good 4 hours. Yeah.
It was so good. So in that respect, you just do it in a different way. You do it during the day. You can have your 2 hours, and that resets you. So, and that's absolutely amazing. So I'd love, thank you so much for all of that. And just, have you got 2 minutes to tell me anything you're involved with before I ask you the big question? Because I'm pretty sure you're going to have a good sort of 5 to 10 minutes to tell me about that. Anything else you want me to tell our listeners about the work you're doing?
I'd really like to talk quickly about my app because it's very unique, and I do think that it's very needed. I fully believe in it. It's a support and community app. So if you look at neurodiversity apps thus far, they broadly are productivity-based, self-help based, independence-based, and therapy-based. But I feel like the main thing is that we can't meet people like us, whether that's platonically or whether that's to date, but also we can't get 24-hour discrete, meaningful support. I don't mean bot-driven. I don't mean outsourced therapists who are mental health based, not neurodiversity. I mean distilling what exactly do we get from quality support and scaling that up and providing it for a reasonable price so everyone can access it. Because here in London, it's £120 an hour to have therapy, which is more than likely not going to be neurodiversity based. And
that's unbelievable. What am I doing?
know.
I'm off to London.
I know. I get laughed at
because I couldn't justify paying that much money to help people. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah.
And then the opposite side of that is, and I'm sorry, NHS, but it is, you need to work on this, I'm afraid. Love you very much. But all this little talky trying to sort the mental health on, the little emails and the bits and pieces.
The problem we have, I think, and this is where the app is so important to me, the problem we have here in the UK is the people with neurodiversity are clogging up the mental health system.
Yeah.
Then they're getting through to some help, but it is seeing 20% of their actual issues.
Yes, yeah.
Then you've got people who are not neurodivergent who are not getting help because we're clogging up the wait lists. We need to separate neurodiversity and mental health.
Yes.
And we need to approach mental health from two different areas. Yes, people have 80% of us have mental health problems, but you need to look at them through the neurodiversity lens in order to get anywhere.
That because I totally get that, because I spent my whole life thinking I was mentally ill, and I blimmin' well wasn't. I was neurodivergent, and I used to get peed off and really sad and frustrated, and I couldn't regulate my emotions because I had a different way of thinking. And doctors giving me Prozac, and I was a total load of rubbish. So tell us a little bit about the app. What does it do? What does it look like? Tell me about the buttons and whistles.
So I have a system with my clients where they can download to me 24/7 on WhatsApp. It's very unusual because most therapy, you don't contact your therapist between sessions, and if you do, you sort of get short shrift, or they don't answer your email because they've not got time. I have a 24-hour constant download system, which can be voice notes, it can be messaging. It helps me see in real time how people are. We're going to have that function. We're going to scale that up. I want people to know. Well, the thing is WhatsApp is encrypted. So it's not going to be WhatsApp, but the functionality is very similar. We're going to have in-house neurodiversity mentors who are there 24/7 for people. So even if you're in a restaurant and you sneak off to the loo and go, I just can't cope with this, you can get an instant meaningful message back saying, don't worry, book a session tomorrow, we're here for you. It's like I call it,
get some validation, and just to say, yes, I'm here, I'm here in the background. Can't do it now, but my goodness, we're going to have a good old chat later or tomorrow. Well, I call it, supportive.
To be honest, I call it the Samaritans done ND style and run by giffgaff, because it's a subscription-based service. We're talking a Netflix subscription cost every month. And then a premium if you need a full face-to-face video that's going to be like a fifth of the cost of private therapy. I'm not saying it's therapy, but if you distill therapy, it gives you psychoeducation, it gives you validation, it gets you seen. It means you don't feel mad.
You can just say, I hear what you're saying about that. You haven't told me about that before. Look, I'm just going to chuck you a few bits and pieces on WhatsApp. Have a look at that from now, for now. And I love what you're saying, because one of the difficulties with neurodivergent people is that they're only seeing you once a week, and so much is happening in the in-between time. By the time they've seen you, that bit's all gone, and they might turn up and there actually isn't anything there in the space.
Oh, goodness.
At that moment.
I know. And also, it's very hard to remember how you felt on Sunday night when you had a meltdown as you walked to your session on the following Thursday. Sometimes it's good for me to see if somebody wants to video their meltdown. I want to see what they look like. If they want to send me something that's meaningful to them, and people, I think people with ADHD particularly, I see this in my VA service, when someone has an idea, they want to tell you now. They don't want to wait 10 days.
Absolutely.
So if they need to message me at 3 a.m., they can. And I'm not going to be like, who do you think you are? Because we're ND.
But there's no way that, I'm sorry, in my humble opinion, that a neurotypical therapist is going to want to see a video of someone having a meltdown. No. I want to see somebody having a meltdown. I want to see what they do. I want to see that stuff. I'm with you 100%.
Well, I've also had people say, in the past, because I've used this system for many years, and the app is an extension of that. But there's also communication cards. There's a very discreet ID card, because I can't see an executive sitting in a business lounge in an airport with a sunflower lanyard, but that doesn't make him less autistic, and he might need to discreetly swipe. I've taken journeys, and just made myself some swipe cards on my smartphone just to say I'm autistic. If the plans change on the journey, please let me know. The whole queue behind me doesn't need to know, and I don't want to look like I'm 9 wearing a sunflower lanyard. So there's lots of different functions, but it's essentially wraparound support, and nothing like it exists. We have app makers over in Ireland. They build for Apple. They build for Stanford. They're a fantastic company. They said they've never seen anything like it. They're very excited about it.
And happening, and it's being downloaded, and people are paying for it now?
It's being built in April. It's going to take 2 weeks. We start beta testing on the 1st of May.
Exciting.
I know.
Can you tell us what it's called?
Well, I mean, Wired Differently is the portfolio name of 9 projects, but I'm not sure yet if we're going to give the app a separate name, and we are definitely going to have to register as a separate business. There's
Don't
an
call it
amazing team.
Uplift, because there's two.
Ooh,
There's
sounds
two,
like a
no, don't, because
bra.
there's 2 apps called that, for goodness
Oh,
sake.
are there? I just thought
No,
of
no, no.
Wonder Bras then, for some reason. Maybe it's because we're the sex topic. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely worth researching the name, but I do love
Yeah.
Wired Differently, and oh, it just sounds so fantastic. I'm behind you 100%, and we'll be following you very, very much. And so thank you so much for telling us about that. And any information about it, well, people will see you on LinkedIn, but if you've got blogs,
you can't miss me on
websites,
LinkedIn. It's my playground.
Yeah, I know. I love it. It works for me very, very well.
I love LinkedIn.
Yes, so do I. But I want to ask you the last question, if that's okay, because
yeah, sure.
I know this is what you're doing, and I ask everybody because it's so important. And if just in sort of about sort of 3 to 5 minutes would be absolutely fantastic. Is how would you like to see positive change at home, at school, and in the workplace to help all neurodivergent people be included and respected as valuable members of society?
What this comes down to for me, every time I think this through, it comes back to believe people when they say that they're not okay or they struggle with something. It doesn't matter how great they look. It doesn't matter what they're wearing, that they've got makeup on, that they're, speaking and laughing and joking. It's the whole Robin Williams thing, isn't it? You if you can't see it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Okay, I know we live in a society where we're not massively religious, we're not massively spiritual, we have a thing about not believing in stuff we can't see. I get that, it's very cultural, but most conditions, most disabilities are actually hidden. If you think about it, you can't tell what is wrong when someone has their arm in a sling or they're in a wheelchair or they're limping. And neurodiversity, what is the worst that can happen? Someone's going to say, actually, I wasn't okay at that party last night where you saw me drinking and laughing and joking. And what we're going to just, what, they're going to con us? They're going to tell us they weren't okay when they secretly were? What are we afraid of? Yeah. Is our ego so brittle that we don't want to believe people because they might be lying when they say they're not okay? So it comes down to believing in people, seeing the best in people. I honestly think, how people at the moment, they're kind of on a kindness drive, especially post-pandemic. These things cost nothing. Believing someone when they say, it doesn't matter what I look like when I did such and such, I felt this way, that is what matters. Our feelings and not what we look like. I honestly think it's that simple. That could change workplaces, because the problem is in the workplace, I'm an ex-recruiter. In the workplace, what do you get? I don't want to treat anyone differently. I'm going to get it in the neck from the other staff,
Yeah.
I don't want, somebody crying off. Yes, people get very suspicious about quick 24-hour absences. That can be a sign that somebody needs a top up because they're not coping, they're masking, they're having to, desensitize. Just believe people and ask people, how do things affect you? But if the worst thing that can happen to you is that someone says they're not okay and they were lying, well, firstly, they must have some issues anyway. And secondly, really, is that the worst thing that can happen? I don't understand what the problem is with not believing people with hidden disabilities. I think that that's very old now. We've got to move on.
But right across society, neurotypical or neurodivergent, there was something that was happening. It might have just been on a little BBC or one of a radio message or something like that. It was saying, you ask the question, oh hi, how are you? And somebody says, I'm all right.
Yep.
They dismiss it, they say, I'm okay. But then you say, are you really okay?
And they never are.
Yeah, but are you really okay? And the only reason I ask that is just because I haven't seen you posting on social media, and I've texted a couple of times, and don't mind me saying, but you were a little bit sort of irritated with me the other day, and I haven't seen you like that before.
And that's nice. That shows you care, I think.
Yeah, it is about being authentic, because with our imposter syndrome, we've had this such a big problem about being fake and perfectionism and authentic and everything else. But if people don't talk and ask honest questions, and people don't answer that, you've got to answer it as well,
how are we going to help people?
Yeah.
But, I mean, your app and what you are advocating to do, what you are shouting from the rooftops, I see you all over the place responding to different people's posts, you know, and this is action to me. This is not saying you're going to do something and not doing it, because the worst thing I hate with my rejection sensitivity dysphoria is when one of my friends, somebody I know, will say, we must get together sometime.
Oh yeah, no, that means nothing, right? Let's do lunch.
Please don't say that. I need it in the diary. I need the time. Don't be late, for goodness sake. Never be late. Never be late. Ever, ever, ever. And I'll bring and I'll bring some extra cash. And it'll be okay. So Sara-Louise, thank you so much for our wonderful time together today. My goodness, we've packed in so much.
Thank you.
I'm having a bit of an imposter syndrome and my heart's beating faster, thinking back about what I've just spoken about to do with sex, but never mind. I'm a human being, I'm neurodivergent, and if nothing else, I'm honest, like your good self.
You have the power, you can always edit, I guess.
No, I'm not going to edit it, because the thing is this is my true self. I want to help people. I want people to listen to the podcast because we talk about good things. And what you have done today, Sara, is talk about really good things, really important things for a lot of listeners who want to hear the truth. This is the truth.
Thank you. I'm lucky to have the chance to. There's a lot of people I think that would like to say the truth, but they don't get, this kind of platform. So I'm really grateful. That's one of the best parts of running the business, is that I get to have a bit of a voice and feel a little bit more empowered than I ever have.
And we have to talk. And I've got coming up I've got David Graham and Tigger Pritchard coming on, and more honesty. We've got to talk about it, and that's a story for another day. But I'm so grateful, and I've loved speaking with you, and I can't wait to see you in the flesh.
Yeah, same.
I got to say, I'm seeing one of my past guests, lovely guest. I'm meeting her at the Lego convention on the 13th of February. I'm so excited about going to stock up on Lego this week.
Wow, I know way too many people who would want to go to that. So yeah,
very excited. So
everyone will be ND.
Thank you once again, and absolutely the best wishes and everything for all you're doing. And I've got my sweatshirt coming up, so excuse me, I've got my sweatshirt on the list, and I can't wait for that. So take care. Thank you so much, Sara.
Thank you ever so much. Take care. See you soon.
Bye, Sara-Louise.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much for listening to the Neurodivergents and Mental Health podcast. Links and resources will be at the end in the show notes. I very much look forward to meeting you again. Thanks for listening. Bye.